Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we talk about saving seeds in the garden. So let's go. It's a rainy day here in the garden. I figured it's a wonderful day to tackle this project that's in front of us, which is going through some of the seeds that I have and putting them away for storage. I've made a bunch of videos showing you my process for collecting seeds from annuals, perennials, and even herbs. And what I'll do is I'll put a link to that playlist down in the description below. I'll also put links to any other related videos having to do with starting seeds either indoors under grow lights or outdoors using the winter sowing process. I plan on covering a bunch of different topics in this video having to do with seeds. And if I missed anything, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop it down in the comment section below with your experience with seed saving, seed starting, or with any questions that you have in general having to do with seeds. In case you're wondering where we are, this is my formal dining room, also known as my son's homework room. He'll be coming home for Thanksgiving break, and I need to get this room cleaned up so that there aren't seeds everywhere. But when I do collect seeds, I do like to store them in this room so that they don't just fly around everywhere. And I let them dry here for about a week. But I have seeds everywhere in here. So we're going to get after it and start tackling as many of these seeds as we can today. But I know I'm not going to get to all of them. I won't be going over every single seed that I'm going to be putting away, but I have made videos on all these seeds, so definitely you can check those out. But I am going to tell you that I like to store all my seeds in small little Ziploc bags. They are typically about 2 to 3 inches in dimension. However, this one's a little bit bigger because I did run out. So I order my Ziploc bags on Amazon, but you can really find them in a lot of different places. And I've been storing seeds in little bags like this for a few years now. Way back when, I used to store my seeds in sandwich size Ziploc bags. I found that those bags were too big because many times the seeds fit in a small little bag like this. You really don't need such a large bag. So I have moved to smaller bags so that I can store them a little bit easier. And I'll talk about how I store my seeds in a little bit in this video. And you can store your seeds in whatever you like. You can store them in paper bags. You can store them in envelopes. You can even store them in jars or really anything that you like. The key is you want to make sure that whenever you store any seed that it is completely dry. You don't ever want to store seeds that are wet because the seeds can rot. And depending on the seeds that I'm storing, sometimes I'm just going to store the seeds by themselves and I'm going to throw away any material that's non-seed material. That's also called chaff. But then there are other times that it's really hard to divide the seed material from the non-seed material. So I'll store both of them together and it usually doesn't matter. It's really a matter of preference and it's also a matter of how much space you have in your bag or whatever you're storing your seeds in. I started collecting seeds a number of years ago, and I started it because I thought it was fun, I thought it was interesting, but also I found that it was a great way to save money rather than buying seeds year after year. And I've learned so much during this time of collecting the seeds, which is why I like to make these videos because I like to share anything that I've learned with each of you. And one thing I've already talked about is the size of the bag. I have collected so many seeds over the years that I found that those large bags were actually wasting a lot of precious space. And that's why I moved to something a little bit smaller. So I definitely recommend that if you're going to collect seeds, you want to store them in something that's small. You don't necessarily need a large jar or a large bag. The smaller, the better, especially if you're not collecting a ton of seeds. But sometimes, even if you're collecting hundreds or thousands of seeds, depending on the size of the seed, they can still fit in something small like this. So just keep that in mind. I tend to collect more than less. I would rather collect as many seeds as possible, just in case some seeds don't sprout or germinate. And even if you don't have a lot of room in your garden and you really only need a small handful of seeds, I suggest collecting more seeds just to have them on hand. When I collect my seeds, I'm not necessarily just collecting the seeds for next year's growing season. I'm collecting them for the season after even, because there might be a chance that I might not be able to collect any more of those seeds for whatever reason. So I'd rather have plenty on hand just in case. And you can always share those seeds with other people as well. A common question that I have is, do you need to wait until the seed pods are dry before you collect those seed pods? And I don't wait until the seed pods are dry. It is nice if they're dry, but it's not a necessary thing. For example, let's say you're at someone's house and it's a rainy day or the seed pods are wet, but you want to collect those seed pods. You can collect them. Just make sure that you're storing them somewhere where they can then dry over 1, if not 2 weeks time frame. And then once the seed pods have dried, at that time you can then remove the seeds from the dry seed pods. The price of seeds is going up, just like everything else, and it gets very expensive. And I feel like gardening shouldn't have to be expensive. It's a hobby for a lot of us. And that's a huge reason why I like to collect my own seeds. And if you look at the price of seeds and how many seeds come in a seed packet, depending on the plant that you're getting the seeds for, sometimes you might only get 10, 15 seeds in a seed packet. Whereas if you collect your own seeds, you can get a ton more seeds that way. In fact, there's been times when I have bought an annual off the clearance rack at the end of the season, knowing that the plant doesn't look great, but I'm just buying it for the sole reason of collecting those seeds, because I know in the end that it's almost like an investment. So you can do that as well. If there's an annual or a perennial that's been marked down and it doesn't look great, you can buy it for the reason of collecting the seeds off that plant. Another tip that I have is to go to neighbors, friends, family members, local parks, and to collect seeds from there. Just make sure you're always getting permission before you're collecting those seeds. But that's a great way to harvest seeds for basically free. I mostly have experience with collecting seeds from annuals as well as perennials, but it's totally possible to collect seeds from herbs as well as biennials and also from vegetables. And if you're not sure what to look for when collecting the seeds off of a plant, there are so many videos out there. Just do a search on the internet or YouTube on how to collect the seeds for whatever plant it is that you're looking for. One packet of seeds down, many more to go. This one was cranesbill geranium. And on the bags, I always like to label what the plant is. I like to put the year that I collected the seeds because all different seeds are viable for only a certain period of time, and it's going to vary from plant to plant. So when you put the year on your bag, then you'll know at least how old those seeds are. So next year I'll know that these are about 1 year, less than 1 year old seeds. Also, cranesbill geranium is considered a perennial here where I live. For almost all my perennial seeds, I usually like to winter sow them because not all, but most perennial seeds need what's called a cold stratification period. You can do that. You can mimic that by putting the seeds in the refrigerator. And when it comes to, well, how long should you cold stratify a seed? It's going to depend on the seed. So you want to do your homework, you want to research that because it's going to be different from plant to plant. In fact, some plants like echinacea or coneflower, it's my understanding they don't even need a cold stratification period, even though they are a perennial here where I live. So it's always good to just research that. And when it comes to researching, I always like to go to multiple sites. I don't want to just go to one site just to make sure I'm getting accurate information. But yes, I will be cold stratifying these cranesbill geranium seeds. I've never grown them from seed before, so I'm excited to look that up. The other thing to keep in mind is when it comes to your seeds, you need to know how deep to plant the seed. All seeds are different. Some need light to germinate, which means you don't want to cover them. You just want to press them into the soil. Other seeds need to be in darkness to germinate, and they need to be planted at a certain depth. So when I collect all these seeds, I don't have any instructions anywhere. Again, I'll be doing my homework, I'll be doing my research on the internet, and I will be looking up, does the seed need light to germinate or darkness? And how deep do I need to sow it? One thing that I've learned with perennial seeds is that a lot of perennial seeds need light to germinate. So when I winter sow my perennial seeds, I'm just pressing them into the top part of my winter sown milk jugs. I'm not covering them. And when you think about it, it's like nature. In nature, perennials drop their seeds, and then you have little baby plants sprouting everywhere. It's the same type of concept, except for the winter sowing process. I'm using a milk jug and doing that. And not everyone has milk jugs where they live, or they don't want to use milk jugs, or they don't drink milk. You don't need to winter sow with milk jugs. You can also take those seeds and just sprinkle them out in your landscape and let Mother Nature do her thing. The seeds of plants come in different sizes, which makes it really interesting and fun. And one seed that I find very interesting is the seed of wax and tuberous begonias. The seeds are so small, they're minuscule. They literally do look like dust. And I've made videos showing you the process for collecting the seeds of begonias and starting them as well. And it's such a great feeling to be able to start begonias from seed, because you you look at the seed and you think there's no way that's going to produce this awesome huge plant. And when it does, it's just amazing. I've never bought the seeds for begonias, but I've seen other people on YouTube that have started begonias from seed that they bought. A lot of times the seeds are pelleted because they're so small. And when you buy the seeds for begonia in a packet, you're only going to get a small handful. But if you're going to collect the seeds yourself, you're going to get thousands and thousands of seeds. Speaking of pelleted seeds, when you have pelleted seeds, the reason that they're selling it to you might be because the seed is so small, so it's a little easier to be able to see the seed. But keep in mind, pelleted seeds have a very short lifespan or shelf life. So if you do buy pelleted seeds, you do want to plant all of them within that first year. And that can be kind of a pain because maybe you don't need that many seeds. So I really, for that reason, I try not to buy pelleted seeds if I can help it, because I might not need all of those seeds and I'm kind of forced to plant them all during that first year. But if you have never grown begonias from seed, I highly recommend, I challenge you to try it this winter. And you can follow along with me when I start my begonia seeds, which is typically, I want to say like January or February. It's definitely one of the first seeds that I'm going to be starting. In a lot of my videos, I talk about storing your seeds in a cool, dark, dry location. I store them upstairs in my house, in my kitchen area, and they've been fine where they're at. I don't put them in the refrigerator or anything. But I do know that some people do store their seeds in the fridge. One question that's been asked before is, do I put anything in these little Ziploc bags to keep the seeds dry? I don't. You can buy these little things, to put inside there so that there's no moisture. You could put rice, but I've never done any of that. I have just kept them as is. I haven't added anything. Again, the key is just make sure you're storing your seeds dry. As my seeds have been drying, I keep them on these folded pieces of paper. Years ago, I used to put them on paper towels to let the seeds dry on there. But what I've learned is with the folded pieces of paper, you can actually use that paper then as a funnel to funnel your seeds off the paper into your Ziploc bag or whatever you're storing your seeds in. And so these tiny little wax begonia seeds, it would be so hard. I would not be able to get them off of a paper towel. But by using a piece of paper that's folded in half, I'm literally just funneling the seeds off of the paper into this bag, which is super nice. And then I can use this folded piece of paper for another seed that I'm collecting and I'm keeping on here so that it can dry for a week or two. My son is 21, and I know I've been collecting seeds since before he was born. So I've been collecting seeds for so long. And I used to try to find all these resources on what to look for seeds. And I haven't been able to find like a great book that just shows what the seed looks like of all different plants. So I definitely have gone to the internet to look for that. And there are websites, if you look it up, to see what a seed of a certain plant looks like and how to grow that seed. And I've definitely been able to use YouTube also to find information, because I'm always looking for, what does the seed of a certain plant look like? And that's one of the biggest reasons why I've been making all of these videos, is to share with you my findings, because you might be in the same boat. You might want to collect the seeds of a plant, but you don't know what it looks like. I've been asked before, will the plant that I'm growing look like the original mother plant? And oftentimes it does. It just really depends on the seed that you're collecting. It's going to vary from plant to plant. But if you're a home gardener, backyard gardener like I am, I don't care if the plant looks a tiny bit different than the original mother plant. Now, if I was trying to sell these plants to some big nursery, let's say, I was growing them for a nursery, then it might matter. But otherwise, typically, the seeds usually will look very close, if not the same, as the mother plant, with possible slight variation. But again, it's going to depend on the seeds that you've collected and from which plant. There are some plants that are sterile and they will not produce any seeds. And I've had questions about that. For example, with impatiens or with begonias, that someone is waiting for the plant to create the seeds and they haven't seen any seed pods. Some plants won't have any seeds, so it really will depend on the plant. Some plants are bred to be sterile and to not create any seeds. And I'd mentioned impatiens. A lot of New Guinea impatiens will not create any seed pods. So keep that in mind when you are looking for seeds on a certain plant, that there are some plants that just will not produce any seeds for you. And then sometimes it's also a case of it will produce seeds, but you just have to play the waiting game. I usually like to collect my seeds when the seed pods are ripe. And that's going to vary from plant to plant. Sometimes the seed pod is actually going to be a green color. It's not always that the seed pod is going to be a dark brown color or a tan color. It depends on the plant. Most plants, the seed pods are brown when the seeds are going to be ripe, but that's not always the case. But regardless, I do like to wait for the plant to have seed pods that are ripe before I collect the seeds off of them. There will be instances where you can collect a seed pod and the seeds are not fully ripe and they can ripen off of the plant. But I typically don't like to do that, and I don't usually tell people to do that. So you really want to experiment with that. A lot of the seeds that I'm working with right now have been large enough that I can just take and I can pull away the non-seed material from the seed material, and it's fine and it works. There are some instances, though, where the seeds are small enough that you can use something like a kitchen colander and you can separate the non-seed material from the seed material. And that makes it super easy for just separating the two. And I found that to be useful with certain plants like coleus seeds, for example, or salvia seeds. There's certain seeds that will fit through the mesh material, but then the non-seed material doesn't fit through the mesh. I actually find this process very, very relaxing. Oftentimes I'll come in here with my coffee in the morning and I'll bring my laptop in and I'll catch up on some YouTube videos, and I will just work on my seeds. It feels great to do it. It is a time consuming process. So if I can chunk it out where I'm doing a handful of seeds per day, then it makes it a lot more manageable. I'm going to show you two things that I love to use when I'm doing this process. Depending on the seed, I have a small magnifying glass. I bought this on Amazon. It has a little light with it. And sometimes, because I'm having a hard time seeing what I'm working with, depending on the lighting situation or the seeds, I can then use my magnifying glass to help me see the seeds a little bit better. And while I am getting older, I do use reading glasses as well, oftentimes, just so I can see the seeds a little bit better. I'm putting on the reading glasses to separate these seeds here. These are a shorter variety of a zinnia. They're red color. When it comes to taking all of these little packets of seed and organizing them, I organize them in a, basically it's a under the bed type of storage system, like a plastic storage system. I only started that process a year ago. Prior to that, I've changed it so many times when it comes to how I store my seeds, but I think this system is going to work great for me now. You want to find a system that works for you. You could take your seeds and you could put them in a cardboard box. But you want to make sure that you're not putting them in an area where rodents like mice can get to them, because we all know mice like to eat in the wintertime. And what a special treat to be able to eat all these seeds. Well, you don't want to do that after all that hard work. You want to find a place to store your seeds where rodents and critters can't get to them. And then you want to think about how you're storing your seeds so that you can get to them quickly when it comes time to starting your plants. I used to store my seeds in a plastic 3-drawer organization type system. And that did not work for me because I had it labeled where it was basically annuals, perennials, and vegetables. And it was just a hodgepodge mixed in there. So when it came time to start seeds, it was hard for me to still find the seeds in there. So the new system that I created, I'll put a link to that video down below, works out so much better because it's still organized by annuals, perennials, herbs, and vegetables, but then it's alphabetical by name. I think that works well for me, but you might want to have it sorted by how many weeks before your last frost are you supposed to start your seeds. So you might have it organized that way. I have seen on YouTube quite a few people using the organization system where you would basically put old photographs in these little plastic containers. And I think that's great. I don't think that would work for me because some of my seed packets are larger. Not all of them are small like this. And I think that's a good system though. I don't think it's a bad system. It might work for you. But for me, the system that I have in place has really worked well for me. Sorry, I'm not looking at you while I'm talking, but I figured this is kind of a garden vlog. I love doing these where I'm working on something, but I'm also sharing something that's on a certain topic. So I hope this is working for you and you're learning a lot as I'm working. When it comes to my annuals, I like to start my annuals under LED shop lights. My very first system that I had for starting seeds was a Gardener Supply grow light system. It was a 3-tier system, and it did not have LED lights on it because it was bought many years ago before they had LED lights. And so we did switch out the lights on there, and now they are LED. But what I found about that system was not only was it very expensive, I'm glad I got it as a gift, but also I couldn't fit that many plants under it. So I did make a video that shows how to make a pretty inexpensive grow light system using shelving unit, adding caster wheels to the bottom if you need them, and using LED shop lights. And there are a lot of videos out there on YouTube, a lot of people doing the same thing. That's in fact where I got my idea from. Thank goodness for YouTube. And it's really worked well for me. And what I tell other people is that you don't have to buy the shelving unit if you don't want, because that's probably the most expensive part of that system. You could just use something that you have in your house. You could use pieces of wood, but you do need some sort of lights. And the LED shop lights have worked out great. They're a lot cheaper than actual grow lights. And I initially was getting a little hung up on the right type of LED shop lights, but you don't have to. You just need LED shop lights that have a certain amount of lumens to them. That's very important. I forget the number. I think it's 6,500 lumen, but I'll put it up on the screen. But I can tell you from my experience that I've had a lot of success with those lights. I've had very strong plants. I've had tomatoes that were actually, fruiting under those lights. I've grown a ton of lettuce under them. So don't get too discouraged as you start thinking about your indoor setup and what you want to do for starting seeds this winter. And this video is mostly just to talk about seeds. I'd be more than happy to do another garden vlog on seed starting and tips on that if you're interested. Definitely let me know if you'd like a garden vlog on a topic like that. A number of years ago, I did create a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets, either Excel or on Google Drive. And it's basically just listing out all of the seeds that I'm collecting. It's like an inventory. And then in the spreadsheet, I put in there anything that I've researched on these plants, because again, they don't have instructions on how deep to sow each of these seeds, or how many weeks before my last frost should I be starting them. So let's say, for example, zinnia. I need to know when to start these seeds, how many weeks before my last frost. So I'll put down in my spreadsheet zinnia, and then for color, I'll put down that it's red, and for height, it's short because there are taller zinnia out there. And then I will have a column for how many weeks before my last frost. And I'll do a search on the internet on, more reputable websites and get a general consensus, an average of about how many weeks before my last frost should I start those seeds. And I'll put that in my spreadsheet. And then I will also put how deep should I plant the seeds. Same thing, I'll go on these websites and find that information. I'll do the same thing for all my other seeds. And now a zinnia for me is an annual. So that's going to go in the annual tab. I also will have a tab in my spreadsheet for perennials. I'll also have a tab for the herbs, and then a final tab for vegetables. The perennials I'm not too concerned about because they're mostly going to require the cold stratification. They're mostly going to be surface sown, but still I do create that information and put it in my spreadsheet. And then I can sort that information by how many weeks before my last frost should I be starting them. And I know based on past experience, when I sort the annuals by average last frost date and what needs to be started first, some of the first things that I'm starting indoors include my begonias, my impatiens get started fairly early, and even the geraniums. Those get started pretty early as well. And just like with anything when it comes to gardening, I feel like it's a process. It's a learning process. And you have to find a system that's going to work for you. But we all need to start somewhere, right? So I think start somewhere, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, see how you can change it so that you can be more successful the next year. I hope this video has been helpful for you. And if you did like this type of content and you want to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button as well as hitting the thumbs up or the like button down below. And before I end the video, I did want to say thank you for all of you for watching my videos, for supporting me. I was so excited recently to hit a huge milestone of 10,000 subscribers. That really meant so much to me. I feel like the content that I'm making is helping some of you out. And if I'm helping you out in any way, I really enjoy that. I love teaching. That's a big goal of mine with my channel, is to teach anything that I've learned over, the many years that I've been gardening. And I feel as gardeners, we're always learning, which makes gardening so much fun. If you have any questions when it comes to saving seeds, starting seeds, or anything garden related, please drop it down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.